everyone and welcome to this week's Sam Says. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sam from the FPL Family and I'm absolutely thrilled to be working alongside FF Scout to produce these videos for you each week. Every week, the Sam Says videos will be thinking about taking those scout notes that they spend so long producing for us and helping to make them into more manageable bite-sized videos so that we can use them in our forward planning for FPL. So we're going to start this week, Sam Says, with a look at West Ham versus Spurs, the opening game of the game week, Mourinho's first game in charge at Spurs. The scout notes start talking about Son, of course they do. 13 points, a goal and an assist. All of that meant he got all 3 bonus points. He was brilliant in that game, back to the Son that we would normally be expecting from an FPL point of view. Worth mentioning that he's not normally like that after an international break, so we really did see the best of Sonny in those particularly opening 60 minutes of the game. We'll come back to him a little bit later when we look at the stats from the scout notes, but it's worth mentioning, of course, that he was the highest scoring player in that game. So it's no wonder that he is, in terms of the Spurs assets, the most transferred in so far this week in the build-up to Gameweek 14. Another player that's mentioned in the scout notes is Dele Alli. Dele Alli has been off form for many years now, not really quite that player that we were anticipating that he was going to be a couple of seasons ago. Had some bad injuries, that's kept him out of the team, and that has made life a bit more difficult for him. However, in those opening 60 minutes, we began to see the Dele Alli of old. We've seen it a little bit in the last couple of game weeks, the beginnings of something. But Mourinho's words to him, talking about him being Dele Alli or Dele Alli's brother, seems to have made an impact already. Mourinho said in his post-match interview when they were talking about Dele's keeping the ball in, which eventually led to Lucas Moura's goal, that in order for him to be able to do that, he had to be focused, he had to be committed, and he had to be confident. And absolutely, I think that's what we saw from Dele Alli on Saturday. More about him later again when we get to the stats. Another player that's worth mentioning from the scout notes this week, from a West Ham point of view, is Diop. Diop got his 5th booking of the season so far in the game against Spurs on Saturday, meaning that he is now suspended ahead of Chelsea next week for West Ham. That is a real problem if you're a West Ham owner. Not having him alongside Fabianski, who was pictured back in training today, means that we've probably got some defensive issues at West Ham. Roberto's not instilling any confidence in anybody. He was not great against Spurs on Saturday, and that's reflected in what we see in the scout notes. Kane, from a Kane point of view, for 60 minutes or so of that game, we did see him playing as an out-and-out striker. There was some dropping deeper that we saw later on in the game, but I think that was in part due to kind of old habits and slipping back into those ways, particularly when Antonio came on. He caused a lot of problems for that Spurs defence. He looked like the bright spark for West Ham if there was to be one. Obviously just recovering from a relatively long-term injury. So if he can maintain fitness, if he can continue that, then we might see a bit more of an attacking potential from West Ham. But with Lanzini out, Yarmolenko looking decidedly off it, it's hard to pick their assets. In terms of the stats from that game then, Haller led the way with attempts inside the box. Only had 4, mind you, 1 ahead of the likes of Moura, but he did lead the way. So that is promising. It's just that he wasn't doing anything with those shots that he had. Moura's 3 shots that he had, so 1 behind Haller, were all classified as big chances. He was really wasteful in that game. Obviously did get a goal, but could and probably should have had more. Kane and Son, interestingly, both only had 1 shot inside the box. They did have more shots, but not many of them, well, 1 of them each, were coming from inside the box. So that's interesting from us as an FPL asset, particularly for Kane, because we would be expecting and hoping for more than that from him. In terms of chances created, it's actually Snodgrass that topped the bill in that game with 5. Now that's somewhat surprising, except for when you look back over the last 4 game weeks, where he has had 3 attacking returns in each of those 4 game weeks. So doing really well actually from a West Ham point of view. I just would worry about getting on the West Ham assets. With Diop's suspension and still without Fabianski for at least a couple more weeks probably while he gets back up to full fitness, that could be an issue. Alright, so the second game I'm going to have a little look at in this week's Sam Says is Brighton versus Leicester. Obviously the Foxes coming out as winners 2-0 in the game, but I think the reason I picked this as one of the Scouts notes I'm going to look at this week is because we have the first player to break that 100-point barrier so far this season. Jamie Vardy, of course, having an absolute party over the last few game weeks with 12 goals now and 104 points over the course of the last 13 game weeks. The guy is on fire, and we would have been wrong really not to mention him and not to have a look at these particular set of scout notes. Obviously the points didn't necessarily come as easy for Jamie Vardy this week as they have done in previous game weeks. A missed penalty for Jamie Vardy. Highly unusual for him to miss penalties. Got a little bit lucky, I think we should say. Maddison owners can consider themselves incredibly unlucky too. Encroachment into the penalty area mean that it was retaken, and of course he takes and scores the second penalty. So he gets the points for that, and in turn add that to his assist and the bonus points. And as a Jamie Vardy owner, everybody is happy. If you're just a Maddison owner, you're very annoyed. The rest of that game, however, I think we should keep our eyes on the likes of Johnny Evans. Now, Johnny Evans went off just after the 60-minute mark, and it was very interesting, as a Scout Notes report, to listen to what Rodgers was saying about him after the game. So he was talking about how he had cramp everywhere, talking about how actually being in hospital and the morphine that he was on had affected him. And actually, I think from an FPL point of view, if you are a Johnny Evans owner, you were very, very lucky to see him get past that magic 60 minutes for clean sheets mark in that game. One to watch. Rodgers was talking about, now he's 31, everything takes a little bit longer to recover. Just one thing to be considering, I think, in terms of Leicester defenders, potentially we should be having a look, if you haven't already. Soyuncu obviously gone up to 5 million today, or yesterday, sorry, in terms of price to buy. Also Chilwell and Pereira as well. Evans might just be a little bit of a risk, as the Scout Notes allude to. What else? So in terms of the stats, obviously from that game, Vardy tops a lot of them, with Leicester having the majority of the chances. All 6 of Vardy's shots were inside the box, and of those 6 shots, 50% of them were classed as big chances. So we can assume that he was actually a little bit unlucky not to score more points than he did. The Scout Notes also talk about how Perez and Barnes were really impressive in that game, both in terms of their shots counts for the game, but I think we just have to be a little bit wary with both of them in terms of the minutes and how much that is a factor in our picking them. The interesting one for me from that game is Tielemans. Now, Tielemans had no shots in the whole game. Now, for him to get no shots in 90 minutes is a little bit disconnected from what we've seen from Perez in recent game weeks. Just one penalty area touch in the whole of the 90 minutes. So we weren't seeing the Tielemans that we have been, that forward movement Tielemans that we've been seeing in the last couple of game weeks. That wasn't really there. He was playing a lot deeper in this game week. Again, it's just something that we should consider if we're thinking about getting on Leicester assets. And of course, why wouldn't we be? Their fixtures look great. He's just one that we should kind of consider. I own Tielemans. Let's see what happens in the next game week. Obviously, the Scout Notes for this game are available on the FF Scout website if you want to read about it in more detail. All right, so the final game I'm going to have a look at in this week, Sam says, is Bournemouth versus Wolves. This is a big game for us in terms of FPL ownership. Lots of managers owning lots of players in this game, likes of Rico and Ake in the Bournemouth defence, obviously Callum Wilson in their attack. And then for Wolves, they're growing in terms of the number of players owned so far this season. Jimenez suddenly getting a lot of new owners. Patricio in goal, lots of ownership there, and even some kind of middle of the road midfielders for Wolves, the likes of Martinho and Neves, and of course Traore. So big game from an FPL point of view, hence why I've decided to have a little look at this set of Scout Notes. In terms of the game then, Jimenez, the most popular player in terms of FPL in this particular game, owned by 15.3% of teams. And that number I would expect to continue to grow over the next couple of weeks. In fact, so far, when the Scout Notes were written after this game, he was the 3rd most transferred in player in preparation for Gameweek 14. This game saw lots of points for lots of big FPL assets. Obviously Jimenez with a goal, an assist for Traore, a goal for Martinho, and an assist for Jota. So all of those big FPL assets from a Wolves attacking point of view doing something for their owners. Lots of them, however, on the bench for this game because Bournemouth have actually been quite solid defensively. Interestingly enough, Simon Francis, their captain, first game back full game starting, back from his injury picked up on Boxing Day last year, and within the first 16 minutes he picks up 2 yellow cards and gets himself sent off. Obviously that means Bournemouth playing pretty much the whole game with just the 10 men, so not really surprising that all of those Wolves attacking players were able to kind of do something in that game and pick up points. Wolves are now unbeaten since game week 5, but in that run since then, they've only kept 3 clean sheets so far this season, and none of them have been in the last 5 game weeks. So interesting from an FPL point of view in terms of who we're picking. Patricio is a popular keeper, but there potentially are better options out there. The scout notes are suggesting, the stats are saying the clean sheets are a little bit few and far between at Wolves at the moment, so maybe we should be considering those assets as an attacking point of view rather than a defensive one. In terms of Bournemouth, obviously they've got a very tough run of fixtures coming up. They play Spurs, Liverpool, Chelsea and Arsenal in the next 6 game weeks. And now the other 2 games, one of them is Crystal Palace away, and the other one is an informed Burnley side. They are at home to them, and Burnley aren't quite so good on the road, although they did win on the road this weekend. So let's see what happens there, but it's difficult. The scout notes suggest that when we're thinking about our Bournemouth defences, that probably Rico might just get a stay of execution in the majority of teams. He is very highly owned in terms of the Bournemouth defence, but he's also much cheaper than a lot of their other assets. So in terms of keeping him, it's less of an issue if we want to bench him for this difficult run of fixtures that Bournemouth have got coming up. If you own Ake though, the scout notes suggest he might be a little bit more at risk when the likes of Crystal Palace, Sheffield United, Manchester United, they all have much nicer run of fixtures between now and the end of the year, so that move away from the Bournemouth defence is potentially on. Scout Notes also talks about how Callum Wilson has now blanked in 6 straight game weeks. So having gone the first 8 game weeks of the season doing incredibly well, we now see him blanking in the last 6. Bournemouth as a whole, in terms of attacking units, have only scored 3 goals in the last 6 game weeks, so they're not looking great. And with King injured and out for a little while yet, I don't know where those goals are going to come from, so potentially there's a bit of an issue going on there. The big stats from the game that the Scout Note picks out, Jimenez, the top 4 penalty area touches in the game, Neves with 5 attempts in the game, but all of them came from 25 yards or further away from the goal. So interesting to see the difference in the type of Wolves player that we are choosing. Even more interesting potentially, because from an FPL point of view, I for one have been singing the praises of Moutinho. The heat maps and stuff look brilliant, and if you check out the FF Scout members area, you can run the comparisons between them and look at where they're getting. What's really interesting is that between them so far this season, Neves and Moutinho have just 4 touches in the opposition box, which is fascinating from an FPL point of view when you think that in the last 2 game weeks, Moutinho has got an assist and a goal. In fact, he got 10 points in this game this week with his goal and 3 bonus points. Very, very interesting. From a FPL point of view then, we need to be kind of thinking about where we're spending our money. Okay, so that's the 3 games that I've chosen to pick out from the Scout Notes this week. There are Scout Notes on every single game. They're all available for you in the FF Scout website. Have a little look, have a read. The bottom of the Scout Notes, you'll find lots of kind of key statistics that come out of the members area. If you're not a member, there's a great offer on at the moment. £1.99 for your first month membership if you pay monthly, and £2.99 a month thereafter. All right guys, take care and I'll see you next week.